Welcome to part 2 of my review of Disney's Recess. If you've come on here without watching part 1, then you are very silly. Go back, you numpty. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the characters of Recess. I'd now like to look at the pros and cons of Recess. The first pro of Recess has to be the fact that it's an imaginative satire of politics, economics and society. The other pro has to be how many supporting characters there are. There's a real variety. They each get their own episode and they each dive into the crew's storylines too. Next, you have to remember that these children are depicted as blissfully ignorant and have strong imaginations, which results in some very inventive fantasies to work into the Recess universe. Their imagination is fueled by a character called Butch, who's constantly telling the children urban myths to frighten them. Butch is used to his full extent in an episode dedicated to Halloween. This Halloween special of Recess had 3 scary stories. The first story was a homage to classic period horror with a werewolf story. The second story had Bite coming to life. In this chapter, I was generally quite creeped out, even though it was a Saturday morning children's cartoon. The third and final story had kind of a funny zombie parody featuring the ancestors of Miss Finster. My point being, the children's imagination and Butch himself can be considered 2 pros of the series. Then the next pro has to be that there's an impressive lineup of guest voices on Recess.
Pick something out. Consider it a gift from Rodney, Steve, Carl, and me. A gift of parting, and a gift of friendship.
Now that's what I call the spirit of Christmas, eh, Mikey?
How'd you know my name?
Oh, I've seen you around. What are you doing down in the gutter?
Main compound needs new coat of paint. Hedges there, and there require trimming. They obscure the northeast and southeast approaches to the main entrance, leaving it vulnerable.
Are you Hank the genius?
Yes. I am Professor Rudelstein from the university.
In fact, we all get to spend recess in detention. I'll learn more of their tricks and get a chance to rest up. Not a bad way for a 42-year-old dude to make a living, huh, sir?
The next pro has to be how the show has a running focus on the ideals of friendship. The crew notice that their friendship is a strong point when they are replaced by another crew on the playground and begin appreciating one another instead of fame or glory. The final pro that I'd like to point out is the fact that Mikey's pacifism and Spinelli's aggression can both collide with one another in a debate of morals and ethics.
Oh, for criminy sakes! I've been telling you all along there's only one way to deal with a bully, Gus. Fight back! Fight back? But it'll kill me! Maybe you will and maybe you won't. But let me tell you something, Gus. The only reason Gilman's picking on you is because you're afraid. Animals like Gilman can smell fear. They feed on it. I say fight back!
No, Gus, don't do it! Violence is not the answer. It's never the answer. Violence only begets more violence.
Don't listen to him, Gus. Fight the big idiot.
No, be peaceful.
Fight back!
Be peaceful.
Fight back!
Be peaceful!
Gus's voice is often too irritating.
Trolls aren't harmless. They're little scary creatures that cause decay and disease.
Screaming and whining.
No, the plane! What am I gonna do? You guys are right. Now that I look at it your way, I see what I become. I hate myself. Don't let me do it. I'm too young to die. I don't even shave yet.
Shut up, shut up, shut up! Another con has to be how the 6 protagonists rarely spend time with others. This may be a little nitpicky, but it would have been interesting if we saw their relationships with supporting characters more often. Another complaint I have is how we barely get to see the children outside of school. Yes, I know the whole concept of the show is focused on the school itself and the playground, but it would have been really fascinating to see the children hang outside the school more often. You get to see what they're up to and learn more about them. My next problem with the show has to be how the characters aren't developed very much. They don't extend much more beyond cardboard cutouts, and when they learn something, it doesn't stick with them for the rest of the series. And finally, the supporting characters, well, most of them are just one-joke ideas. Now, despite these cons, I consider Recess to be quite a sophisticated series with little adult content. Now, before you start huffing and puffing, hear me out. The adult content of Recess. In Swing On Through the Other Side, Spinelli is convinced that she's witnessed a supernatural phenomenon. She sees a girl swing over the swinging set bar, but doesn't see her come out the other side. Despite there being a logical explanation for this at the end of the episode, we see Spinelli start a religious cult inspired by the character of Swinger Girl. This is intentionally disturbing as we see the playground's children all wear Swinger Girl's trademark hat in imitation, as Spinelli leads the followers with a philosophy based on Swinger Girl's own ideals. What's unsettling about this concept is that cults are more complex and extreme than the episode portrays them. Examples include the sect known as Heaven's Gate, led by Marshall Applewhite, which resulted in the mass suicide of 39 of its members, who believed that they were destined to reach an alien spacecraft in their afterlife.
Then there's the Manson family cult, led by Charles Manson, who brainwashed his followers, then ordered them to murder the residents of a Hollywood household. Plus there's the People's Temple cult, led by Jim Jones, who poisoned his followers with cyanide. My point being, Spinelli is a cult leader in this episode, and these figures are usually psychotic sociopaths with the intention to manipulate or control. With this in mind, one would question the character of Spinelli, her intentions, and where it could have led if Swing Girl didn't turn up at the end of the episode to explain her absence. In the trial, Spinelli is taken to the playground's court after being accused of assaulting Randall Williams with a rock. Obviously this episode is a homage to the novel Lord of the Flies. One would conclude that the children having a trial is something usual, as kids will often play imaginative games. However, most of these games are simply imitations of what kids have seen in the media. But we never see the children mentioned in any television, video game or movie that inspires them to play a courtroom game out. So this begs the question. Is the First Street School playground so developed, so evolved, that its children have created their own system of law and justice? Also, how long has such a system been going on for? In a sense, this is impressive if intentional, and worth crediting the writers for. However, Gresham does have a wide knowledge of the law system in American society, and brings this into the playground. Despite this, TJ is the one that argues that Spinelli deserves a trial in the first place.
In Bonky Fever, Mikey learns that he'll have to start waiting for the bus alone from now on. This signals a change in his life, which frightens him because he doesn't want to grow up. Due to this, Mikey begins behaving like a baby and starts idolizing the kids' franchise mascot, Bonky. Wherever he goes, Mikey starts behaving like a toddler, and the rest of the crew have to look after him as well as defend him from potential bullying or mockery. When it comes down to it, this episode is in a way portraying disorganized schizophrenic behavior. Here lies the problem though. Mikey recovers from this childlike behavior very quickly with help from his friends. Such behavior takes complex therapy to manage, so either these kids are far more intelligent than we think, or it's simply lazy writing. Whichever this is, there could have been potential for exposition if Mikey was taken to therapy, and I don't think this would have been too boring or difficult for children to understand. For example, Hey Arnold featured an episode where Helga underwent therapy and revealed that she had complex family issues. The Candidates is an episode that makes me question two things. If the show covers the concept of a class president, then what power would they have on the playground? This is never explored. But Vince has been a class president all along. Well, until Gretchen beat him in the newest election in this episode. The writers could have really made use out of this. Gretchen or Vince could have had their relationship with King Bob explored. TJ's crew would have had more playground power because a member would be a political figure. And then there's the idea that all grades would have their own presidents, thus complicating the politics of the playground or showing the student council as a satire on the United Nations. Then again, grades are treated like social classes, so maybe each president could represent each grade. The grade of the president could rank their political power within the playground. Yes, I know I'm looking too deep into this and being a bit too nitpicky considering this is a 10-minute Saturday morning series, but Recess could have really made some great stories out of the concept of class presidents, in my opinion. In The Economics of Recess, the episode explores the subject of extreme capitalism. However, such a concept could have carried on throughout the show, potentially. Business in the First Street School's playground society is often limited to the hustler kid, who usually provides the service of gambling and black market products. This begs the question, how has the economics within the playground worked? Seeing as the only businesses in the series have been the hustler kid's trench coat offers and a brief major corporation run by TJ. However, the show does have other brief businesses, like TJ and Vince's haircut service based on the currency of comic books. So I'm wondering, how can a society's economics all be driven by the hustler kid and brief businesses? But then again, maybe this episode briefly explored capitalism to imply that the playground was a communist society. I mean, the characters don't seem to need money, except in this episode. The Monster plot kind of represents a capitalist change for the playground in a sense.
To conclude, Recess deserves its cult status, in my opinion. And television producers have been trying to imitate it ever since. So obviously it holds up in some way. So that's the end of this episode. If you have some suggestions to submit to the reviewing generator, then comment below and we'll throw it in there. By gosh, it could pop up, couldn't it? Cheerio now.